Hi everyone. This is my standard extreme tier list based on personal DP difficulty. And this time I will be going through them all individually. Because they're like less than 50. It's not that bad. So I guess I kind of think of these differently than I do the hards and normals because they're supposed to be the most difficult, So for the 1 stars, well, one of them is a really new extreme, but Gangnam Style or Gangnam Style, however you want to say it, and the drill. The drill was my first standard extreme DP, and Gangnam Style was my second. So those are automatically 1 stars for me. Really easy to DP. I still think the drill is easier. I've re-perfected it, but not Gangnam Style. And Soul Passivation, I love the chart, but I think it's easy to DP, as I did it within about 5 tries the first day of the season, which is decent. So yeah, those are just easy DPs. But still, pretty much every extreme has at least a tricky part in it. So I think they do, but not really. The 2 stars, again, a little trickier than the ones, but still definitely on the easy side. Slumber, I DP'd the first day of the season, which was still exciting at the time. And just not very difficult for me, but really good extreme chart in my opinion, even though it gets hated on a lot. I get it though. It's just weird. Sandstorm. I was about to put this in the 1 star row, but then I thought about it and it requires more stamina than those, I think. Even though it's like one of the most repetitive charts in the game. I still think it's really fun. But it was a later DP for me. And I had a 2 perfect score leap, but wasn't too bad overall. Is You Rollin' is a really fun extreme chart, but I think it's easy. It was my 10th standard extreme DP, and the first time I DP'd the extreme on the first day of the season, which was cool. Yeah, a lot of free swipes in there, but also some tricky rhythms such as stage 4, and even the intro. Just those 16ths, I think, rap parts. And Give It To Me is a swipe fest. Really a swipe fest. It took me like 2 days to DP, a day or 2. It was a little tricky because there are awkward patterns, especially in the final stage. But yeah, I think it's not too bad overall. But really hard for clearing. And similar thing with Makina Vibes, or however you say it. It was an early extreme DP for me and quite an easy one, but it was still like a day-long grind. And Give Me Some More. Again, I thought about putting it in the 1 star, but then I thought about it. Even though it's also a really repetitive chart, it's more complex and it has some tricky parts and some swipes thrown in to kind of confuse you. The fast lane is probably, well, it's definitely more complex than most of the ones I've talked about so far. It was my 15th standard extreme DP, so not super early, but not super late or difficult either. I think the rap parts are tricky. And then you've got tiny little micro tiles I think during the choruses towards the end, which can mess you up. Anomalies was an early Extreme DP, pretty early. I DP'd it during season 25, like the day the season dropped, which was fitting because we got Heavy Shadows, another Fixian song, which we'll talk about at the end. But yeah, it's a good extreme chart in my opinion, but it's not very balanced. You've got a lot of easy parts. And that is what happens with the Fixian songs. Just tough stages, but really easy choruses. Archangel, or however you say that. I don't think it's a 1 because it gave me some trouble to DP. Maybe because it glitches when I record a lot of the time, but regardless, it took me a few hours. And yeah, maybe because it's like Everybody Falls, and you all know how I'm with that one. It's still overall pretty easy though. And Give Me Chocolate. I think it's too complex to be in the 1 star, but it was like standard extreme number 6 for me. So I got good at it once I got diamond, I feel like, or around there. Because it used to be one of my least consistent. Had a lot of trouble getting platinum. And it was my last to get 5 stars, I think. Those milestones were way back in the day, but you know, it used to be tough regardless. But it became easy and ended up in the 2 star. The 3 stars, I think, are definitely a lot more complex. And they have some tough parts, for sure. But still not at the top. So We Live Forever. I know a lot of people will disagree with this one, but I've always been pretty good at We Live Forever. It was hard to get like platinum and diamond, but I got a 3 perfect run like almost a year ago, which was really good at the time. And then I didn't improve it forever, but you know, it was a pretty high score, so. But it wasn't too hard to DP despite being like one of my last 8, I think. And yeah, I almost had a 3 perfect score leap actually, but I got an undeserved 1 perfect at like 91k. I was so annoyed. But then I DP'd it like a few days later. Thrones of Blood. I think a lot of people might disagree with this one too. But yeah, I've always been pretty solid with it. Definitely a really complex chart, but really fun one. And not too bad for me to DP. Same with Overdrive. I think it was standard extreme number 8. And I know quite a few people struggle with this one, which I get it. And I used to as well, because of those jacks mainly. I think it was my last platinum and a late diamond extreme, but then I got good at it and it was an early DP. So not too bad, and amazing chart. Avalon. I DP'd this within like a day of the season, so it wasn't too bad, but yeah, it could definitely be tricky, especially as a thumbs player with those choruses. They hurt. But overall, I'm unpopular. I like the chart. Duality. Love the chart, and almost everyone does. Pretty dang complex, but well, I DP'd it the day I got both 75k averages. So can't remember how or what number it was, but definitely not super late. Yeah, it wasn't too bad. It was definitely difficult at the time though, like really difficult. I could barely clear it first day of the season. Figure it out. I originally put this in the 2 star, but then I moved it. Because I thought about it, and despite it being my only reperfect in the extreme marathon, that was kind of a fluke. and it was hard for me to DP originally. That swipe part near the end feels very off sync to me. I don't know. I mean, it was a really early extreme, so I'm not going to be hard on the charting team, but feels really drifty, and it's a rock song. But actually not that old, I think, maybe 10 years old. Du Hast and Figure It Out is fun, by the way, anyway, so it's okay. Du Hast was also pretty middle of the road. And as I mentioned in my video of it, that 4-note burst during the double spam in the final stage was my choking point. That was a run killer. But the rest of it wasn't too bad. And it was also like, I think my second or third diamond extreme. So yeah, and it wasn't that late of a DP. So not too bad overall. Bonfire. I know I used to be really good at it, but it's become tougher. But still not enough to be at the top. Another really complex chart, although repetitive. And yeah, it's kind of fun to clear though. And it was an early standard extreme DP. I don't know what number, but probably first 10. The 4 stars, I think, are challenging, but not quite at the top like the 5 and 6s. So Therapy. And again, it's personal DP difficulty, just DP. And maybe a little bit scoring overall. But anyway, Therapy. I think we all know it's really awkward, especially for thumbs players. And it has that little 16th burst, or a couple of them near the end, that are easy to choke on. And overall, it just wasn't the worst, but it wasn't a walk in the park. I actually like the chart though, now that I've DP'd it. It's pretty fun to play and really satisfying. Rockstar. Definitely would put it at a 6-star for clearing. But for DPing, it wasn't terrible. When the season dropped, I DP'd it the first day, which was huge at the time back in season 10. And yeah, it became my highest extreme score for a long time. Which, mind you, was like 99,300 plus at the time, but it was still my highest. And yeah, it's tricky to clear though, and a little tough to DP. Trying to, well, process the swipes and get all perfect plus, it can be overwhelming and really easy to mess up. Raiden, I thought about putting at a 5-star, but then I remembered it was one of my very first diamond extremes. I think number 3 or 4. Definitely first 5. And I had a 2 perfect score leap when I DP'd it, but it's still always been at least somewhat tricky for me. And it's a pretty intense rap extreme. Not the easiest. Party Hard. This one has a lot of swipes, so it's easy to score on once you get it down. But stage 4 was what made it hard to DP. And again, trying to process those swipes on top of getting all perfect plus can be hard or tricky. So yeah, that's what put it more towards the top. Fogo. Again, one of my first standard extreme DPs, I think number 4. And it wasn't too hard to diamond. Got it on the first day of the season. And it was season 13, so I got all diamonds like right before season 12. I think the day before actually. And yeah, so I was still pretty early on in having all diamonds. So it wasn't too bad, but to DP, stage 4 was still really tricky. And then with how nervous I get really shaky during good runs. I kept messing it up in the final stage, even though it loads easier overall. So, yeah, that put it at a 4. 5 stars, I think, are not at the very top, but still at the top. So, the Trooper was a pretty late extreme DP for me and pretty much everyone else. Really complex chart, incredible, but really complex, pretty challenging. It's never been like my best, but not my worst either. It was okay. I actually DP'd it with the perfect plus highlight off and had a 2 perfect score leap. I have no idea what happened there, but I was super happy and surprised. I was kind of freaking out. The mother load, one of my favorite extremes, but yeah, quite challenging. I think one of my last 4 to DP. Yeah. Just stage 4 is tricky with, again, it's trying to nail those swipes while getting all perfect plus. It can be really tricky. And then you've got a solo. That's really easy to choke at the last second because it goes on until the very end. Like the final stage does not let up. So, yeah, really fun but really challenging. Tornado of Souls. A lot of people think this is more of a 3 or 4, I think. But for me, it was quite challenging. Stage 4 especially has really tricky rhythms. Really, all of it does. But even for clearing, I have trouble with stage 4. And then you've got a solo. Again, one that really doesn't let up once you near the final stage. Yeah, just not the easiest, but another really good chart. Sweatbox. Really repetitive chart, but I've always found it really tough. I know a lot of people disagree with the 5-star, but yeah, I had trouble DPing it. I think it was pretty late. Can't remember if I DP'd it before the Trooper. I might have not actually. Can't remember, but regardless, quite tricky. I Know a Little was also quite tricky. It was going to be an earlier extreme DP when I got 1 perfect, but yeah, then that piano solo kept on giving me trouble and I just couldn't. So it was a fairly late one. And Godzilla. My DP on this was very random. I had like a 4 perfect score leap when I was just trying to get 99,900 plus. I got the DP. I thought for sure I had 1 perfect at least, too. So when I saw the score, I was like, oh my god, what? I just DP'd it. What just happened? And I couldn't stop freaking out for hours. Well, not literally, but it seemed like it. That was really wild. But yeah, we all know it's difficult to learn. And I think the earlier stages are actually harder to get all perfect plus. But final stage is definitely harder to clear. Now the 6 stars. The final bosses. I could not narrow it down, so a lot ended up in the 6 star. So we all know Wynonna's Big Brown Beaver was my last one for Max Savages, my final boss. This was the one I immediately knew to put in 6 star. Oh my god, it's really just unspeakable. Thumbs players, we know it's a struggle. That long hold part, my 1 perfect run was at the long hold part. Thank goodness I only got one perfect run, but yeah, it still hurt. And then the rest of that solo is tricky too, along with the shaky hands. And there are just a lot of tricky rhythms in general. I do think it's a fun chart, but yeah, just not fun at all to DP. What a day that was. What a day. I played it for like at least an hour straight the day I DP'd it. Worth it. The Devil went down to Georgia, my second last to DP. Another really tough one, but nothing will beat Winona. Yeah, it throws micro tiles right at you. And then you've got lots of tricky rhythms throughout the entire thing. And then you've got a solo at the end, which is easy to choke on. And thankfully, the ending does get a little more chill, or actually, kind of a lot more chill. But regardless, if you get shaky hands like me, it's easy to choke. Thankfully, 2 perfect score leap though. Stand Up Tall. I know this one is going to surprise a lot of people, but it's hard. Stand Up Tall is hard. It's always been at the top for me. Took me forever to get all the medals before DP as well. Yeah, I'm surprised it's not one of my most played. But I'm also surprised that Winona is not my most played. Somehow Clash of Clans is. Shouldn't be, but whatever. Anyway, Stand Up Tall. The intro is hard even. It's kind of like Is You Rollin'? And as I've heard and made up myself, Is You Rollin' is the female Stand Up Tall. So yeah, the intros are very similar. But then the actual Stand Up Tall is much different than Is You Rollin' throughout the rest of it. A lot more challenging though. Really not much to say about it. And then you've got, I think, 16th in the final stage, which my heart was racing when I DP'd it. Thankfully, another 2 perfect score leap though. And Psyche, Sexy and I Know It. This one is another 6-star. The 16th part, the wiggle part, lots of micro tiles, even a tricky intro. Some swipes, I guess, that could trip you up. Doubles, everything. Really complex chart. And there's not much else to say about it. It's just so hard. I got 1 perfect from like a 5 perfect score leap, which was frustrating because it was during the wiggle part, and then it took me months to DP. Yeah, it would have been my best score leap on an extreme ever, but it wasn't. It didn't happen. Plasma. I think this is one of the most complex standard charts, if not the most complex, because it was the first to have down hold swipes. And yeah, I think it's a really tough one. One of my last 3 to DP. And I had a lot of trouble with it in general. Amazing chart, but really complex, really challenging. And yeah, really not much to say about it. It's just a nightmare. No one knows. We all can agree that this is a 6-star, I think. Somehow my 3rd standard extreme DP, but that was such a fluke because it's really hard. The first few stages are easy, almost like a hard chart, but then you get to stage 4. It drifts. It drifts. But really, with the tiniest holes in the game, quite possibly, which is weird for a base game song, but kind of cool, I guess. I don't even think you get points for those. But yeah, the final stage is really the hardest for me. That micro tile solo, oh, it's where I get like all of my perfects. And then you've got that staircase at the very end. Oh, and also tiny hold swipes, tiny holds and tiny hold swipes. But after all that, you've got the staircase at the end, which I've actually gotten super consistent with getting all perfect plus there. But during the DP run, I was still nervous because of shaky hands and all of that. Yeah, quite a tough one. N95. I know we might disagree on this one, but I think it's a 6-star. One of the most awkward charts in the game, in my opinion, at least standard wise. Not as in something like no one knows that drifts. It's actually just awkward. Really weirdly synced, really messed up rhythms, although it's fun to just play. Late DP for me. At one point, I choked out in one of the last 5 notes. Yeah, I didn't play Beatstar for the rest of the day. Really don't know what to say about it. It's just kind of a nightmare. Heavy Shadows. Yes, I'm one of the people to put Heavy Shadows as 6-star. Yes. I think it's just because of stage 4, though. I do agree with that. Because most of it is free swipes. You just have to learn to keep up with the tricky swipes, and then they're easy. And then super easy choruses. But stage 4 really just gives a lot of people, including myself, trouble. Some 16ths, some micro tiles, doubles after micro tiles in one lane, which is very unique, very weird. I think it's a really fun chart, just not fun all to DP. And then the infamous Johnny Winter, Be Careful with the Fool. Everybody hates it, pretty much. Definitely for DPing. I think it's the hardest standard extreme to clear, but Winona is the hardest to DP for me. This was still a pretty late one, though. It's really just a disaster from the very start to the very end. Or the very beginning to the very end. Disaster, mess, atrocious from start to finish. Be quaff. It's really hard to clear. And then stage 4, that's the part I have the most trouble with, clearing and scoring wise. Really just messed up rhythms there. Does not go with the rest of the chart. The chart is all over the place. I have no idea how it only has like 465 notes. It's so bad. Don't let a low note count fool you. This chart is the proof of that. Don't know what to say about it. It's just a mess. And we all hate it. Clash of Clans theme. Now, I know a lot of people will probably disagree with this one too. But really hard to DP for me. And it was a late diamond too. You've got those, I don't know what you call them, but lots of micro tiles, lots of jacks. Those micro tile doubles in bursts of 3. Well, I guess 6 in a way, but you know what I mean. A burst of 3 doubles, and they're micro doubles. And there are a lot of them throughout the entire chart, pretty much. And then you've got a pretty free part with, well, actually a completely free part with lots of swipes in stage 4. And then a hold swipe, which is random, but it's there. And then you go into the final stage, which gets a lot faster. That nasty double tap in one lane, and then the double swipes. Everyone hates that. Honestly, I have trouble clearing that part to this day, and I've always struggled with Clash of Clans. But yeah, besides that, really nothing is worse than Winona. But then Firestarter, which, yeah, it is a tough one for sure. Again, it has like no notes. It's funny how the lowest note counts can have the worst charts. But yeah, pretty disgusting chart to DP. I actually think it's kind of fun to play, but certainly not DP. Especially thumbs players, we despise it because we can only use 2 fingers. Well, in a way, they're not fingers, but whatever. We don't have very much, I guess, mobility. Like, our options are limited. We can't do all those tricks to make it easier. We have to suffer, putting our left thumbs through a complete workout, an absolute workout. There are so many of those hold note combos throughout the entire chart. Well, stage 4 and the final stage, but regardless, they're awful. And then it drifts. It drifts so much throughout the whole thing. The intro is really easy, but then it's automatically really drifty. Actually, not very many swipes, but quite a few hold swipes. And oh my god, I think Firestarter is definitely one of the final bosses. But nothing will be worse than Wynona's Big Brown Beaver, because that's just my boss. I will never reperfect it. I played it just because it's a good chart, but I'm not trying to score high on it again because it's just terrible. Well, anyway, yeah. That is my standard extreme tier list personal DP difficulty. Again, I'll get the deluxe ones out very soon. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next video.